Hello again, Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games, back with more Gellerpox Infected from Rogue Trader and the Hullbreakers. So I'm going to start with Olive Skin 09221. And this big old chap is Nasher Screamer. All three of them have their own independent names, and they are... Oh, let's go brush for this. And they are again part of the crew of Alucia Vane's ship post-infection. And much like his boss Volgar Thrice Cursed, Nasher Screamer is made up of multiple individuals that the Gellerpox fused together. But there's kind of an elephant in the room on these guys because they don't quite fit the Warhammer 40,000 aesthetic. Not completely. I'll come to that in a minute. Now, Nasher Screamer isn't too bad in terms of that, but he doesn't seem to have quite the cybernetic look you would expect of the other Gellerpox infected show. In fact, there doesn't seem to be any cybernetics at all on him. Now I'm leaving this area deliberately bare for the time being. In fact, I would say he looks a bit more like one of the ogres from Warhammer Age of Sigmar, or Warhammer the Old World, than he does anything else. But after that, in a minute, I'm going to do some more work on him in a minute, a little bit later. Golden Skin. Yeah. Let's use Golden Skin, which is 09092, and this one is Big Spike. He matches the aesthetic the best with his goggles and dog tags. Got an entire fly come out of his arm. These were some of the most dangerous of the infected that Alucia Vane and her crew had to put down. And as their name implies, they break things. And he has exposed viscera, and one of his arms has been replaced by a whole fly. And lots of maggots, so he definitely matches the Nurgle aesthetic very well. And has just enough futuristic details to match the 40k aesthetic too. And I'm going to take a bit of this and do some of the mouths in Nasher Screamer's torso. So the head's coming out of his arms. And now the elephant in the room on this is the Writher. And he does not seem to match the 40k aesthetic. I'm going to start with the Golden Skin because he's got a victim crawling around in his belly trying to get out. I'm going to switch over to Tanned Skin 09044. But no cybernetics. But the detail that is the most out of place is this fish right here. The question being raised, where did he get a fish? I'm certain if Alucia Vane was aware there were fish on her ship, she'd have claimed them for herself, but I believe that some of these models may have been meant for Age of Sigmar or a related game, and then later reappropriated for the Rogue Trader box set. Possibly because whatever project they may have been intended for originally fell through, or someone up in the chain changed their minds. Unsure, and there's not really any evidence outside of parts of their aesthetic don't match too cleanly with Warhammer 40,000 aesthetics, but do match Fantasy Age of Sigmar aesthetics. And with the rest of the overall humanoid form here with the tanned skin. Not much clothing other than a brace or any skimpy loincloth over a distended belly. And while mutation is a big part of chaos in general in both games, the Rider's mutations have a definite aquatic look, but the tentacles seem to make them match Zeech more than Nurgle. Now, I'm going to take Rosy's skin 09068. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm going to go back to Nasher's Screamer and pick out the rest of the faces on his body with the tan skin. All these excess mouths. Again, showing the amalgamation. Now, while that dries, I'm going to take Rosy's skin 09068. And while it's still wet, kind of blend in. So, finishing up the feet. I'll worry about picking out claws and teeth later. I don't necessarily need a complete, well, not coverage, but it's not the word I'm looking for, but it doesn't have to look clean. I want it blending into the other elements. I mean, now the fish hooks on the riser don't really stand out too much because there's hooks everywhere and it could easily be fabricated. Same thing with Natural Screamer's Cleaver, but again, the one detail that throws me off is this fish. And these boils or barnacles and all of these tentacles here. If I nick some of the other skin, that's fine because chaos. In fact, this almost matches, I can't think of the name, but the newer soul-sucking sea elves from Age of Sigmar seem to match the aesthetic on this guy better. And again, it's just pure speculation based on certain elements of the design that don't quite fit the aesthetic of the game it's for. Alright, that's not too bad. More of the barnacles or blisters here. A big spike, and we'll get his viscera and his pachyderm-like foot here. Okay, I think he's wearing pants, at least torn pants, so I think that's just a medallion and not a skull tattoo on his butt. Big insect-like limb. The maggots coming out of this open wound. And some more work on the entire fly coming out where his arm should be. Whoa! And then back to Nasher's Screamer. And I think I've done all the mutated details I want to do with him, but I will take that same flesh and kind of do the inside of mouths here. Got this wetter than I would normally use, but that's acceptable in this case, and if it extends past, that's fine. I'm down, getting the tongue. One of many. And that's pretty good, and I'm going to let this dry before moving on. One quick look to make sure I'm not missing any of our mouths, and we're good. Okay, back in a bit. Next, Shield Brown 09161. And in terms of thinning the paint out, I'm using just enough water to thin it, so not an excessive amount. And this is just going over the cleaver, at least the handle of it anyway. And I suppose I'll use it on some of the rope here, holding the loincloths together. Or maybe I should say, sort of holding the loincloths together. It's a little string holding trophy parts. And actually, there's nothing on him I want to do, but I will do the hood covering the rider's face in this. And a little more. And then Marigold Yellow 09007. Since the rider has a fish on it, I'm going to make it a goldfish. Why? Just because. That's literally it. Just because that's what I feel like doing. It's, again, such a strange detail. Name one other Warhammer 40,000 model that has a fish on it. And I can't think of one. So. Then I'm going to take Leather White 09062 and go back to Nasher Screamer. And this is going to go on all that hair. All that hair that happens to be on 3 different faces. And that again, Nasher Screamer does seem to fit the 40k aesthetic better than the Writher does, but I could see him originating as some kind of mutant ogre for Age of Sigmar. But again, this is just speculation based on things on the model and details of the sculpts that just don't seem to add up. Okay, I'm hearing bad sounds coming from my computer, but I was going to say the joys of technical difficulties strike again and keep picking away at it. And I'm just going to go ahead and use this on Big Spike's sideburns. Why not? Oh, there's a piece of paper hanging off this, so I usually do parchment the same color I do bones and tusks. So we'll just do something a little different here. And speaking of bones and tusks, oh, keep dropping it. Yellow bone 09143. Part of me says maybe I should have done this while the flesh tone was still wet. For the sake of blending a little better, but this is okay. Again, refreshing both the paint and the water in my brush as needed. Toenails. I think that's good for him. Switch over to the rider. Bit of an undercut here. Makes it a little difficult to paint, but it's okay. See, he definitely looks very Lovecraftian. Particularly if you've read, what's that story, Arkham Horror? No, that's not the one I'm thinking of. I'll have to reread Lovecraft to figure out which story I'm thinking of. Shadow over Innsmouth? That might be it. That might be the one I'm thinking of. I'm going to switch to a smaller one. Or a finer one. I'm starting to slur my speech. I'm just still waking up. Carefully get this row of teeth peeking underneath the hood. Back to Natural Screamer. Now, something about these two heads coming off his arm in particular remind me of the old Ghostbusters toys that were released in the 80s. Oh, that's a tongue. Okay. Then Moldy Skin 09149. I'm just going to do this quick and just do all these body parts hanging off of his necklace. Too much paint, not enough. I'm just going to do this the quick way. Another more body parts hanging off his apron, I just noticed. So we'll do these in a old, rotten, undead skin tone. Old trophies. Do this ambiguous lump, same color. And do a quick check of the other two for any more details like that. And I think we're up now. Let's see a couple of little, what might be maggots here. So just get those real quick. And I'm going to call, you know what? No, I'm not calling it good and letting it try and moving on. Plate mail metal. Which is kind of stuck. There we go. And how about that? So far, 11 minutes into this clip, and I've only dropped 10 frames. That's not too bad. So there's a ring here embedded directly into his flesh, holding up the tunic. There's a hook embedded into his flesh here. Oh, may as well do the shackle. He's got an earring, more meat hooks. And the shackle is definitely not out of place in 40K, but again, I've got my theory I've mentioned a few times already. Okay, now big spike. Plenty of nails sticking into this horn. Again, a spear like that could have been improvised from materials scavenged in the bowels of the ship. But it, again, brings me back to the question of where did the fish come from? Actually, I'm going to take a little bit of that white, again, the leather white, and get this binding around the ankle. going back to that brown and getting the bracer here, which looks like it might be leather as opposed to metal, or maybe leather with a little metal, but okay, I think that's good now. I'm gonna let this dry and now a little more brown and do this trailing rope at the end of the harpoon. Now I'm gonna call it good for a bit. Next, Templar Blue 09056. Ah, boy, this one is almost cash. There's some paint. Okay, that might. I'm hoping that's enough. After all, the Hullbreakers are wearing little more than flimsy loincloths and torn pants. But still. Maybe I should have done this before the steel, but too late now. What's done is done, so. And I just realized I forgot to do part of Big Spike's belt. I'll have to touch that up. Looks like the Writher has more hooks on his loincloth I didn't catch earlier. I'll have to pick those out after this dries. Yeah, I should have done this part first. That just means I'll have to do a few touch-ups on his flesh here. The trophies or possibly snacks, I don't know. Although given that Nasher Screamer is multiple people fused into one horrible whole, referring to him as a they, using plural pronouns might be more appropriate, but hard to tell where the tunic ends and the folds of flabby flesh begin, but and here it's tied to this ring embedded in his flesh, or their flesh. We assume that this head here is in charge, but what if it's action by Congress or committee, I suppose? I'm actually seeing it all right. So that's against the cloth. I'll do a few touch-ups off camera, but I think I'm just about done with base coats. Okay, Quartz Bronze 09197. Got a few details to wrap up here. Then I can move on to the shading. Set of keys. Not that someone who could rip the door out of a bulkhead would need keys, but he's got them. And the dog tags. Okay, and then I want to redo part of the spear here and just get the head in the bronze as well, or the shaft in the bronze as well. There we go. And uniform gray is a little bit of a rubble that the rider is standing on. And actually, I'll take out bronze again and just pick out the studs on his bracer here. Just dot, 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 dot. This is not my best detail work. I'm a little twitchy right this second. Now that gray, just get this here. Okay. I need to do some more touch-ups, particularly on the undead flesh before I shade, but that's all I need to do on camera, so back in a bit. Alright, time to shade. Aged Pewter 09196. Oh boy, is this almost out. There we go. Thinning this out into a wash with 1 part water to 1 part paint for most colors. Darker colors will need 2 to 3 parts water to 1 part paint. Carefully dot the studs. Now, normally with a group of models like this, I would only do 1 on camera, but because these are so different from each other, they're all getting a turn. And dog tags and keys for Big Spike. Now, Ghoul Skin 09148. I need to avoid doing adjacent colors for the most part, otherwise they'll blend in together. There are circumstances where you'll want that to happen, but it's just something to be aware of. And just the wings. And that's it for Big Spike, but the rider has those grubs and this bile here. Ambiguous meat on Nasher Screamer. Linen White 09061. I'm following the white, which is the official color scheme on the hair, just because I couldn't come up with a better idea, at least not before I started. So this'll do. Put more in there. And then fire orange 09006. Woodstain brown 09160. This one's a bit of a gamble because that pewter is still dry on the bracer, but I'm gonna go ahead and give it a shot anyway. Trying to go around the studs. And on Nasher's Scraper. Big spike. I just gave a little this to his goggles. And now I'm going to have to let that dry before moving on. Next up, Scorched Metal 09125. Giving their steel that rusty, pitted look. Well, thinking about it, maybe I should have done the same for the bronze. Oh well. It'll be fine. So I need to thin that out a little more. Because I don't want to completely obscure the steel. Just giving a solid coat that gets this into the crevices, which will help give the illusion that Nasher Screamer is going after his targets with a big, rusty cleaver. Rusty earrings, hooks. And a big spike. Blackened, I think I'm remembering his name right. It's been a while since I've read the little fiction that came with them. And then just a little bit of Blackened Steel 09205. It's going to go just on the lenses here. I'll take a gamble and try doing the teeth with stained ivory 09142. Alright. Doing big spike last because some of his metal is touching his horn. Seems I forgot to do the proper base coat on his claws, but so it'll look a little different, but I'm just going to roll with it at this point. Okay. Okay. Going around the studs. Well, not so much studs, just full-size nails. I'm going to thin this out a little more and do a bit of it on the fly arm. Don't necessarily want or need a full coat on this. And maybe just a light going over on the insect-like limb here. I'm just going to get a second going over as well. A little bit on his teeth. And let that dry, I think. Next, Breonne Blue 09055. Again, 1 part water, 1 part paint to thin it out into a wash. Being careful around the raised areas I've already done. Being really careful on the Writher's loincloth to avoid the fish hooks. And Big Spike's clothing gives the impression of coveralls where the top was perhaps torn down as he gained muscle mass in his mutation. They'll do a little bit on the fly and the grubs crawling out of his wounds. Again, still trying to figure that out because this whole fly head is part of him. Alright, that's not too shabby. So, yep, I'm gonna have to let that dry before I move on. But just about there. Alright, next, Bloodless skin 09150. This is lighter than what I used last time on Volgrar Thrice Cursed, so this should work out better. Because last time all those multiple flesh tones kind of blended in together. They were muddied up by the unusual shaders so much that the splotchiness I wanted didn't come through, so I'm going to thin this out quite a bit too. See if that helps. And trying to avoid nicking his trophy necklace. Keeping my brush nice and wet during this. Flowing around. Let it flow around. Right. And so far, it looks like this will work out better. I'm using this on all the flesh to help blend it together. Make it look cohesive, as if this really is part of one whole. That's not total patchwork. don't want to get the teeth if I can avoid it, but I'm not going to worry about it if I nick him anyway. And proportionally, his right hand or left hand is almost too small for the massive tricep that goes with it, but again, hideously deformed mutant of superhuman size and strength. To quote the Toxic Avenger. Yeah, this is working better. That variance is still showing through reasonably well. Trying to avoid the facial hair, the horn here. We'll go over the rest though. I might be convinced to use a bigger brush for this, except I don't want to nick the clothing and the decidedly non-flesh parts with this. I'm going to finish up with the big hook arm. Do that part last just because it's directly touching the base. Keeping my brush nice and wet during all of this. Making certain I get inside any divots and cracks. And while I allowed the coverage on the fly arm to be splotchy before and erratic, now I want it thorough. Ensure I get nice solid coverage on that pachyderm-like leg. Soak up some of the excess that got on the clothing. A bit more under the underarm there. And the writher. Being real careful around the hood and where this hook goes into his mouth tentacles. There's going to be one more layer of shading after this, but this is a big one. I'm avoiding the victim here. Because that victim is not part of the writher, it's a meal. Boy. cautious here. Because again, I want to get just the flesh and nothing else. Okay, yeah, this is working out much better than the last one. Definitely showing enough of the undercoat is showing to show that splotchiness and the various flesh tones that make up this monstrosity of a former crewman. Ending with the octopus arm, because it's again coming very close to the base and where my fingers are gripping. Although maybe I should say square because of the shape of these two tentacles there, but that's semantics. Showcasing a difference between the two major cephalopod species. And I just dropped him, oh boy. Trying to keep my hand out of the light when I can, but it's not easy in this case. Okay, it looks like a nice solid coat, so let that dry and wrap up. I can highlight in detail. Okay, the last of the shading. Golden Shadow 09091. And yeah, this isn't completely dry down here yet either, but it's dry enough I can move on. This is just going on the victim inside the belly here. And Stormy Gray 09088. Just going on the rock he's standing on. I need to wait a minute to do eyes, so back in a bit. Starting on eyes, matte white. Using just enough water to thin the paint out. I don't know if that yelling's coming through, it just sounds like some neighborhood kids playing, nothing to worry about at all. Right in there. Nope, not yet. Not calling it good yet. I almost forgot. There are a couple of eyeballs on his shoulder here that are plainly and bluntly visible. Okay, now that's got it. I need to let that dry before finishing up those details. Alright. Matte black. Just carefully dotting in the eye. Now, going to take, let's see here, let's do Phoenix Red at 09005. Doing this as a pseudo wash, sort of lighting effect. Get the fly eyes. Just like that. Now once that dries, I can highlight. Okay, switching to a dry brushing technique for the highlights. Lemon Yellow 09009. Gonna need a ragged feathered brush, kind of like this, and rubbing out most of the paint till it looks like there's nothing left. And I'm dusting the area to be affected. And this gives it a nice, unnatural tint to the skin. Refreshing the paint is necessary, and it seems my downstairs neighbors have decided to get really loud again. Going against any raised areas. That looks nice and gruesome. I got no grip today. Alright. I am dropping everything today. This is turning out nice and disturbing. Looking human enough to give the impression that this thing was once human. Next, yellowed bone, or creamy ivory, sorry, 09144. Oh boy. System difficulties again. I'm just going to plow through it because I want to get this. I'm not feeling my best right now. I just want to go ahead and get this wrapped up. Okay, looks like it's stabilized at least. Joys of technical difficulties strike again. Driftwood Brown 09162. Next, Ashen Blue 09057. Bit too much paint on that one. Ghost White 09063. Golden Highlight 09093. Next, True Silver 09207. Bloodless Skin 09150. I'm going to do a little bit of this on his bowels. Tarnished Brass 09198. I missed a little of that brown here. Take care of it real quick. Now the brass. going over things here because I'm almost done. Sun Yellow 09008. Okay. And Misty Gray 09090. Get grip on the brush. That's highlights. Now for a little detail with matte black again. Just enough water to thin the paint and a fine brush. Just gonna It's a very crude Star of Chaos there. Now swapping to a flathead and taking matte black. To carefully line the base, being cautious where that limb touches. If I'm dropping hundreds of frames again, I'm beyond caring at this point. I just want to get this done. Alright, that needs to dry and then I can wrap up. Okay, time to base. White glue. I've clogged up my bottle. Be generous with your glue, at least for this. And water. Sacrificial. Oh boy. Oh, I dropped the brush. I have to use. Where'd it go? I need more basic material on down here anyway. Oh, gotta love it when your materials fight you. Doc. Just managed to hit my head on a lamp. Alright. Where'd that brush end up? I need to use one that's kind of beat up already because this glue solution will ruin your brush rather quickly. Okay, found it. Okay, try that again. Got my basic material out. Talus in this case, I'm going to just mix that up smooth like. And carefully painting around the feet of the model. basing material. There's a spare brush that's dry, just dust away where I don't want this stuff. Okay. Applying to the rest. Being careful by the tentacles where they come close to touching the base. While I'm avoiding hitting the foot, I don't care too much if I hit the rock that the riser here is standing on. Nice little coat. It's not bad at all. And that needs to set for a bit before I finish up. Okay, last step, a sprayer brush on adhesive, a glass eyedropper. Glass because this stuff will bond to plastic quickly. And carefully drip on your basing material. Let it soak right up. This will seal it and give it a rock hard finish and keep the material on the model, not in your storage boxes or bags, whatever you happen to use. You need to let this sit for a bit first, otherwise this will just push the material around and make divots. Clean out your tools thoroughly. And that is it. The Hullbreakers from Warhammer 40,000 kill team. Galapox infected. In all their repulsive glory. Continuing with more of Nurgle's new minions. Until next time, I am Ian Stuckey with Mastermind Games, signing out.